This video was originally broadcast April 2020 from Menla Retreat and Dewa Spa in Phoenicia, New York. To learn more, please visit their website at menla.org.
Okay, hello everybody. Here we are for session 2 of the Vimalakīrti Home Companion. Instead of Prairie Home Companion, Vimalakīrti Home Companion. But the only thing is we don't have anybody playing the banjo. I'm so sorry. I don't play the banjo. But what I am going to do is I'm going to read some Sanskrit. I wanted to do it last time, but I'm going to just chant a little Sanskrit for you first. Evam maya nama sarva buddha bodhisattvebhyaha. That means I pay homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Evam maya shritam ekasmin samaye. Thus did I hear on a special occasion. Bhagavan vishalyam viharate sma. Oh, Bhagavan Vaishalyam Viharati Sma. The Bhagavan was dwelling in Vaishali. Amrapalivane, in the Amrapalivana, in the Amrapali grove. Mahata Vishu Sangena Sadham Astabir Bhikshu Sahasrai. Together with a great Bhikshu community and with 8,000 bhikshu, 8,000 of 8,000 bhikshus actually. Sarvai Arhatvirikshina Sravai. All of them were arhats, saints. All of them had destroyed their addictions. All of them were without afflictions. They were in control. Their minds were liberated. Their wisdom was liberated. They were all aware of things, mindful. They were like great elephants. They'd all done what they had to do. They had to do what they should be doing. They had picked up on their burdens, and anuprata svakarta, and they had fulfilled their own attained wishes. Parikshina bhava samyojanai. They had destroyed their attachment to existence. Samyak anya suvimukta chitai. They were all liberated in mind, and they were all aware, truly. Sarvacheto vashi parami praptai. And they were all had attained the supremacy of the supreme controls of mind. You know, this by the way is really interesting in the sense that this is a Mahayana Sutra. That is, it is a Buddha discourse of the universal vehicle. And it's describing the arhats, which were the saints of the individual vehicle, as I prefer to call it. I never call it Hinayana. I call it individual vehicle, Pratimokshayana. And so from the Mahayana point of view, the dualistic Buddhism, the one that thinks that nirvana is elsewhere, and so to be liberated you have to leave this world, they don't put them down. They're praising them, and they're here with Buddha when he put forward the Vimalakīrti teaching. It's really quite lovely. You know, because of course, if everyone is going to become free of suffering, everyone is going to become aware of reality, which is the freedom from suffering, then people have to do it one by one, as well as sort of wish to do it for everyone. The only reason of wishing to do it for everyone is in a way because it's more powerful in liberating even yourself. Because if your motive is only to liberate yourself, then you do liberate yourself, but then you discover that you're still there, and you're connected to everybody else, and they're really in a mess. And then because you're so sort of liberated, you're like more laid back, and well, okay, and you're a little cut off from worrying about them, then that means that you slower in helping them get liberated than the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva remains a little less laid back and more devoted and more passionately compassionate. They are also compassionate, but not as passionately compassionate, and therefore they are slower in helping all the other beings get free. These arhats, by slowly becoming bodhisattvas and slowly becoming Buddhas. Whereas the bodhisattva is in a rush because he's not so laid back, or she's not so laid back. Like moms. Moms are not laid back when baby is screaming. Moms start dripping milk. They just have to do something about the screaming. They can't just run away and be cool. You know? Okay? Then it says, Dvatri Shatacha Bodhisattva Sahasrai Abhinyana Vinyatai Sarvair Mahabhidya Parikarmani Ryatai. So here it says, and also 32,000 bodhisattvas also he was with. And these were Abhinyatai. And that's why they're bodhisattvas, because they are more clairvoyant. So they can feel the feelings of those who are suffering, so they're more in a hurry to get them free of suffering. Sarvair, all of them. And Mahabhidya Parikarma Niryatai. And they had also, because of their great clairvoyances, they were determined to get rid of any kind of negative karma. And Buddha Adhisthana Adhishtitai. And they had been magically elevated by the Buddha's magical elevation. You know, Buddha has he can adhisthana. The word adhisthana is wonderful. It was the word used for coronating and throning and seating a king, adhisthana. You place them in their place of exaltation, on their throne. So Buddha adhisthana, he places all beings in an exalted throne, the throne of reality, because reality is good from Buddha's point of view. And he knows that beings can discover that because they're also reality, even though they think they're in some horrible situation. So Buddha Adhisthana Adhishtitai. So they had been enthroned or magically installed in the Buddha's magical installation, like kind of elevation. You know, I love it. Saddharma Nagara Palai. And they were also guardians of the city of the holy teaching. Saddharma Nagara Palai, Saddharma Parigrahai. And they had fully embodied the holy teaching themselves. And Mahasimhanadadibi Dajadigvi Gushta Shabdai. And they had their words, the sounds that they made of their melodious voices went into the 10 directions in the form of great lions' roars. But the reason it's a lion's roar is not because they're screaming, but it's because what they say has the weight of not of authority, but the weight of reality. People subliminally feel it's real, it's true, it's sincere, it comes out of their awareness of reality. And that's the Simhanada. That's the lion's roar, the teaching of emptiness or freedom, or voidness or freedom, which is freedom. Mahasimhanada adibihi, I love it. Dasadig vikushta shabdai. Melodiously they say that. Sarva sadvana deshita kalyana mitrai. And they are the virtue friends, the goodness friends, even when they weren't asked. Anadeshita, sarvasata, of all beings. Because naturally you don't necessarily ask your friend to tell you to be good. You say, don't nag me, leave me alone, don't bother me. I don't want to hear about it. But the Bodhisattva, never mind, even you don't ask them, they're going to be your virtue friend, Kalyana Mitra. And this Kalyana Mitra, by the way, for Buddhism, this is the best kind of a teacher, is a good friend. A teacher is not a big boss, in other words. This is the Buddha's way of moving away from the patriarchal, paternal authority in the family and the guru, patriarch in this religious sect. Getting away from that, he talks about Kalyana Mitrai. Triratna Vanshanu Pachetravihi. They see that there is no cutting off of the lineage, the family of the three jewels. Because when you're in the refuge of the reality, the teacher of reality, the community that is realistic, then that's a new family that you have. That's a new tribe, a new clan, a new nation. That is, So therefore they saw to it that the family of the three jewels, which could be from any nation, from any tribe, from any family, no Hatfields and McCoys, just Tridatma, the three jewels. Main of the three jewels being Dharma Ratna, the jewel of reality. That's the thing. Dharma doesn't mean doctrine or teaching. That can mean teaching, but teaching is teaching of the nature of reality. For you to discover it, even though you can't really teach nature of reality because it's inconceivable beyond verbal formulation. But you can help a person open their own experience so they can know it, because after all, they are reality, right? Nihatamara pratyartikai, and they also are strenuous. Pratyarta means they are determined to nihata, to get rid of devils, to overcome the devils, And sarva parapravada anabhibhutai, and they're never troubled by opposition or critics, That doesn't bother. Anachedya, sarva nivarana parya, and then anabhibhutai, smriti samadhi, dharani, sampanai, and they're completely provided with dharani, with the command formulae, and also the samadhi of mindfulness. So they always know all the magical formulas, the dharanima, which are like the ones that fit with reality, scientific formulations. And they are always in the samadhi, meaning they're always concentrated on their mindfulness. And sarva nivarana paryutta navigatai, and they always arise above any kind of obstacle. And anavarana vimoksha pratisthitaha, they're stead in a liberation which is completely unobstructable. And achedya pratibhanai, and they can never be cut off in their eloquence, liberating eloquence. Anachedya pratibhanai, and dana dhamma niyama, dana dhamma niyama samyama shila shanti vihya dhyana prajnopaya niryatai. And so they are completely released through the generosity and self-restraint and control, ethical control of niyama samyama. Isn't that interesting? The first two angas of Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra, yama and niyama, but yama and samyama here, which are kind of self-control and restraint. And Dhamma means also self-control. So three kinds of self-control, and then Shila means ethics. And Shanti means tolerance, and Virya means creativity, creative energy, and Dhyana means contemplation, and Prajna means wisdom, and Upaya means art, liberating art. So Niryatai, so they're all completely transcendent in all of those. Anupalambhanutpatika dharmakshanti sammanvagatai, and they're also completely endowed with the tolerance of the birthlessness of things and the ungraspability of things. They're totally able to be open in that way, where they know they're really not even happening. Everything is ready there for reshapable. It isn't all fixed in some way. So that's anutpatika dharma. And also anupalamba, ungraspable. You can't catch it, but you can surf it. Samanvagatai, because they have that tolerance. And they turn the wheel of Dharma, which cannot be reversed. That's the wheel of Dharma is like a water wheel. And what it is the suffering of beings flows toward it, and the delusion and ignorance and curiosity of the beings flows toward it. And it turns that wheel. And that wheel turns that into answers and wisdom and responses and realism. Alakshana mudras mudritai, and they are sealed by the sealing of signlessness, marklessness, Everything is beyond being marked or signed or traced. Sarva Satvendriya Dhyana Kushalai, and they are very skillful in knowing the faculties of all beings, like what all beings are capable of. And Sarva Parsha Dana Bitu Abhibhuta, Sarva Parshat Anabhibhuta, Vaisharavya Vikramibi. And they also have the initiative and the skill, confident skill of never being overwhelmed by any kind of assemblies, audiences, or vast groups of people. The crowds don't disturb them. And they are in fact they have great initiative to confront them confidently. And Mahapunya, because again they are based in reality. Mahapunyayana Sambharu Pachitai, so they're also completely provided with stores of intuition and merit. Lakshanana Vyanjana Samalankritta, and they're adorned with the marks and the signs of enlightenment, of greatness. And Parama Rupa Dharibi, and they're usually extremely beautiful. And Apagata Bhushanaihi, they don't even need any ornaments. And Merushika Rabhya Dyudgata Yashakirti Samudgatai, and they're all, oh, never mind, it takes me too long. Anyway, I love it. I'm going to read it now and then. But anyway, we want to get on with the second teaching, and we have 12 chapters, so, which I'll maybe do in 8 sessions, maybe I'll do in 12, I don't know. But back in the first chapter, remember I said they asked the Buddha, how do we make beautiful and how do we create this Buddha land? The Buddhaverse, how can we make a land like that? We understand about trying to be enlightened, but how do we change the whole universe into a Buddhaverse? They asked him, right? He said, excellent, excellent, now I'm going to tell you. Listen carefully. But the first thing he says, for example, Ratnakara. Well, I read the first thing where I say, the Buddha field of Bodhisattvas, or the Buddhaverse of Bodhisattvas, springs from the aims of living beings. I did say that, read that one. Meaning that this whole world is made by beings and their wishes and desires and perceptions. It's not made of wood and stone and brick. We create the wood and stone and brick to create solid things and solid bodies so that we can learn to reach out to each other, actually. We all did live in past lives in formless states, all of us, and we got really bored, and you get very isolated because you can't touch anybody else, and you can't even touch yourself. You have no form, no body. So we came back to have these bodies. We finally found this midpoint of not hell and not animal suffering, like really terrible. We built up back to this midpoint, and also not some kind of ridiculous deity who just thinks I'm fine and never mind, I'll never die, lives in denial of death. But a human that is also lives in denial of death, but we can become aware of it and mindful of it, and then be really alive at a new level. And we can really learn to navigate evolution in such a way that we never get into any bad condition in the future, and we also can be most effective and skillful and artful in bringing others out of any kind of bad condition. That's what we want to do as Bodhisattva. So the world is created like that, by beings interlocking with each other. And then they create rocks between them, solid walls and things, the paranoid ones. So some of its solidity is made by people's paranoia, and that's structured by culture in human beings, so they have culture. But one can be a totally open being as well. That's what a Buddha is. That's truly the most safest, powerful way. So anyway, he just says that to undo. He's not saying that the world is only mind. He's just saying mind is the strong shaper of the way the world is. And therefore, when it seems solid, minds have shaped it, not just your mind, everyone's mind has shaped it that way. And everyone does not just mean human beings. It includes all kinds of micro animals and subhuman animals, sub in the sense of less intelligent, and also superhuman animals, gods, demons, deities, asuras, all kinds of magical beings who are also all interlocking and all intershaping. And so, therefore, they have great power to create planets, universes, solar systems, and they're always recreating them and reshaping them, but none of them are fixed in some way that they seem to be. That's the key. They're all illusory. They're like illusions. They're like holograms. rather than just fix things in and of themselves. That's the key insight that enables one to begin to move around. And it takes not just one time understanding that, but it takes embodying that, deeply understanding it with every fiber of your being, which there is a path of how to do. But he says here, just to get started, he says, for example, Ratnakara, remember he's talking to the head Lichavi youth, Yapi. Should one wish to build an empty space, one might go ahead, in spite of the fact that it's not possible to build or to adorn anything in empty space. In just the same way, should a bodhisattva, who knows full well that all things are like empty space, wish to build a Buddha field or Buddhaverse in order to develop living beings, help them to evolve, he or she might go ahead, in spite of the fact that it is not possible to build or adorn a Buddha field in empty space. So there's no way you can make a Buddhaverse, in the sense if you want to make the real one final thing that everybody's always going to be in, that's impossible. You can't. But you go ahead and do it anyway. Doesn't matter. So he only says it's impossible because it means it's something you have to maintain, you have to constantly do, you have to constantly be working on. Because there's an infinite number of beings who are still freaked out. You have to be able to tolerate that sort of lack of closure of love. Because the work of doing this, the creativity of doing this comes from love and compassion. It's energy, that's what it is. Upaya, which means art, which can mean world-building art. It can mean art, like making a painting, a sculpture, singing, playing music, that kind of art, or it can be art of engineering, art of healing, art of teaching, art of talking, art of speaking, art of gesturing, any kind of art. Ratnakara, a bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of positive thought. When he or she attain enlightenment, living beings free of hypocrisy and deceit, and especially self-deceit, will be born in her Buddha field. Buddhaverse. Noble son, noble child. A bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of high resolve, messianic determination. When he or she attains enlightenment, living beings who have harvested the two stores, that's of merit and intuitive wisdom, and have planted the roots of virtue by doing great things, will be born in his or her Buddha field. A bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of virtuous application. When he or she attains enlightenment, living beings who live by all virtuous principles will be born in his or her Buddha field. A bodhisattva's Buddhaverse is the magnificence of the conception of the spirit of enlightenment. The magnificence of the idea, in other words, that means you conceive, I could be a being, a Buddha being who would have the ability to help all beings with maximum effectiveness. Of course, each one is their own way of being helped. It doesn't mean you're not seeking omnipotence, where you could, you would seek it if it wasn't completely unrealistic. That you could just instantly save all beings from suffering like one poop. No, but you can, by whatever method is possible, reshape their life and their understanding and their environment and everything where they could then do so. And that's so omnicompetence is what you're seeking. When she attains enlightenment, sensitive beings, which maybe I would translate now, who are actually participating in the Mahayana, the universal vehicle, will be born in her Buddhaverse. A bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of generosity. When she attains enlightenment, sensitive beings who give away all their possessions will be born in her Buddha field. A bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of morality, ethics. When she attains enlightenment, sensitive beings who follow the path of the 10 virtues with positive thoughts will be born in his Buddha field. A bodhisattva's Buddha field is a field of tolerance. So he goes through all the different virtues, up to wisdom, and then the 4 immeasurables, the 4 social graces, the skill and liberative art, the 37 aids to enlightenment, the mind of total dedication, personal observance of the basic precepts, and self-restraint in blaming others for their transgressions. Buddha feels the purity of the path of the 10 virtues, and here's a list of the 10 virtues. Everything is in this sutra, When she attains enlightenment, sensitive beings who are secure in long life, great in wealth, that is to say, they are secure in their own long life, and they lengthen the life of others. They don't take the lives of others. So that's the positive way of putting the tenfold, like the 10 commandments of the Buddha, which has a positive as well as the negative thing. Don't kill, but also save lives, your own and others. They're great in wealth. That makes them, they can be greatly generous. You can give tremendously to beings. Chaste in conduct. That means you can be ethical in a good way. Enhanced by true speech. Those are three of body. Long life, wealth, and good conduct. That's the opposite of killing, stealing, and sexual abuse. And then the speech ones are 4 of them. Enhanced by true speech, soft-spoken, free of divisive speech, intrigues, and adroit in reconciling factions. So therefore you become a diplomat instead of creating divisions between others. You harmonize with people. You speak the truth to them, and you speak softly and sweetly to them, not harshly and violently. Enlightening in their conversations, therefore meaningful in their conversations, free of envy, free of malice, and endowed with perfect views, or realistic views. Nowadays I would write realistic views. I have to retranslate it actually. I'm going to polish it up, don't worry, I'll polish it up. Endowed with realistic views will be born in her Buddha field, Buddha verse. So these are the 10 ethical precepts of Buddhism right there and there. 4 of body, 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. And they are just simply how you make a Buddha field. And then when beings are born, they all are born like that. They all only are like that. Once you make a Buddha field where beings become like that. And then they are the ones who come in your Buddha field. That's how you do it. So he goes on and on like that, quite a ways, and then finally he comes. So he says that it has a nice peroration here, very powerful. Thus, noble child, just as is the Bodhisattva's production of the spirit of enlightenment. In other words, is the Bodhisattva attitude, the messianic determination, or what the Dalai Lama calls universal responsibility. That is, you take responsibility for everyone. Now, yourself, of course, but then everyone. Unlike modern world, where because of people's spiritual nihilism, materialistic nihilism, nobody even takes responsibility for themselves, actually. That's how bad it's become on this planet. Oh, I don't take any responsibility at all. That's what people say here, when it gets bad, and then they blame other people. No, you take universal responsibility means you take responsibility for everything, even the bad things others do. You take responsibility, and certainly for yourself, starting with yourself. So, his production of the spirit of enlightenment, so is his positive thought. As is his positive thought, so is her virtuous implementation. Her virtuous implementation is tantamount to her universal responsibility. Her universal responsibility is tantamount to her determination. His determination is tantamount to his performance. His performance and practice is tantamount to his total dedication. Her total dedication is tantamount to her liberative art. Her liberative art is tantamount to her development of sensitive beings. And her development of sensitive beings is tantamount to the purity of her Buddha verse. So in other words, your Buddha world is as good as your mind and your behavior and your speech. That's how good it is, he says. The purity of her Buddha field reflects the purity of the sensitive beings. The purity of the sensitive beings reflects the purity of her intuition, intuitive wisdom. That is, immediate, deep full knowledge of reality without any intermediating concept or notion. That's what intuition is. It just knows immediately. It's not that it knows unreasonably, because it's in contact with reality. So it just knows immediately, that's all, without having to have a concept to know through. That's what intuition means. That's what wisdom means, ultimately. The purity of his intuitive wisdom reflects the purity of his teaching. The purity of his teaching reflects the purity of her transcendental practice. And the purity of her transcendental practice reflects the purity of her own mind. So a Buddha mind, the Bodhisattva finally gets where she becomes a Buddha, and her Buddha mind is totally pure, and therefore the world is totally pure. The universe is totally pure. So then the Buddha, not meanly because he's teaching this way, but a little sneakily, it says magically influenced by the Buddha. He used telepathy to create a thought in the mind of Shariputra, who's very open-minded because he's a saint, he's an enlightened saint. So Buddha just plants a thought in his mind, and Shariputra has this thought. If the Buddha field is pure only to the extent that the mind of the Bodhisattva is pure, then when Shakyamuni Buddha, that is the Buddha who's standing in front of him, he thinks, was engaged in the career of the Bodhisattva, his mind must have been impure. Otherwise, how could this Buddha field, Buddhaverse, because this is his Buddhaverse, he's a Buddha, here he is, this is the world, wherever a Buddha is a Buddhaverse, how could this Buddhaverse be so impure? And in Sanskrit, impure means imperfect, so many faults. Okay? He thinks that. Then Buddha, knowing telepathically the thought of Venerable Shariputra, but he put the thought there anyway, never mind. He's like simulating ordinary interpersonal behavior. So he knows that. He says, what do you think, Shariputra? Is it because the sun and moon are impure that those blind from birth do not see them? And Shariputra replied, no, Lord, it is not so. The fault lies with those blind from birth and not with the sun and the moon. So Buddha declared the same way, Shariputra, the fact that some living beings do not behold the splendid display of virtue of the Buddha field, of the Tathagata. I already explained that. So anyway, then they go on with that, and I told you that where he puts his toe down, and everyone sees the world as perfect. And that's where we ended last time. But let me just elaborate that, because now this course, this online course, which the next session is next Saturday night, Saturday Night Fever, next Saturday. Anyway, for those of you who sign up, we're in a very imperfect time. We're all scared of coronavirus. Many of us have coronavirus. Some of us sadly lost loved ones dying of the coronavirus. Although they're not lost, they're already in another life. They're in a between state, but they lost to us. I'm very, very sad. Sad for them because they weren't prepared to lose their human life, because they didn't know they were going to go on, probably most of them, and they maybe liked their human life. And it's very, very sad. Even though you know it's go on, that doesn't justify or rationalize taking people's lives. No way. Because it's such a valuable life of self-awareness. So don't think Buddhists are careless about human life. That's a complete wrong idea. They very, very much cherish it. Much more. This is a false thing of nihilists, materialistic nihilists, who they think people who believe in future life, they think, of course, it's irrational. Understandably, they think that because they won't look at the evidence for it. But they think that people dream it up because they're afraid to die, and so they make up a fantasy that they're going to live in the future, whereas they bravely are not worried about that themselves. There'll be nothing. They think so. Even though that has no evidence, but they forgot that fact. They're so used to it. And the point is, the person who knows they go on is much more scared of future life than a person who thinks they're going to be nothing. Because nothing is not painful. Nothing is not exciting. Nothing is not blissful. But the bliss of no pain, to that degree, it is blissful. And so if you automatically, without having to do anything good, and even if you did every kind of bad, You have an automatic escape if you could really become nothing. So that's what makes them so smug and so easygoing about destroying all life on Earth, actually, those people. And they wrongly think that the people who enter future life, in the sense of feel they have to face it, that they think that sort of makes them able to do anything or not do anything or wrong. You get much about it if you're going to face existence and you're going to have sensitivity. Because you're scared of pain, is what people are scared of. Nobody, in their right mind anyway, is scared of nothing. Because nothing can do anything to you. And if you're in it, you're invulnerable. So, you don't know you're there, but that's part of the invulnerability. If you could become nothing, but, newsflash, there is no nothing. To say become nothing is a meaningless statement. It's a misuse of language in a Wittgenstein's expression. It's insane, actually, because it's not evidenced in any realistic way that there's such a thing as nothing. It's the word for what is not evidenced and of which there is no such thing. That's what it is. So it's not something where you can come place where you can go. Some dark, quiet space. But even, no way. If you know the meaning of the word. Okay. So that's just a point. So now we come to the Vimalakīrti. Now, unusually, as I said, this sutra, although it's a Mahayana sutra, and sutra means in Buddhism, it has other meanings, like Yoga Sutra Yoga Sutra there has a different meaning. There it means that it's a string of abbreviated aphorisms. And it comes from the word sutra, which means a thread, because when they wrote them down in ancient Indian palm leaves, they had loose leaf thing with holes in them, like loose leaf binder has holes in the paper, but then they put a string through the paper to hold the loose leaf thing together, So that's what sutra, that's the root meaning of sutra. But in Buddhism, sutra means what the Buddha taught or said. But there are few rare sutras taught by other people, usually enlightened people, which Buddha kind of authorized them to teach. And so in a way it's thought to be, indirectly coming from Buddha. And it turns out Vimalakīrti is like that. There's very few, one thing that's rare about them, very few of those are lay bodhisattvas. Most of them are some kind of divine bodhisattvas or monks who teach, as authorized by the Buddha. Very few. It's a lay person, a banker. But now we're introducing Vimalakīrti. Okay? Now, if some of you have followed my instruction last week and downloaded from the 84000.com website my translation there, then you might have also seen the Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche's little introduction where he introduces some of the characters in a cute way. And I hope that's on there. I don't know, it's still on. It was on once, and I hope I downloaded it, and I read it, but I don't know where it is on my folder, or never mind my problems. And but if you did, and you might have read that, so you then were introduced to Vimalakīrti by him in his own inimitable way. But the sutra also introduces him, and I'll just read a little of it. At that time, there lived in the great city of Vaishali. Vaishali means magnificent, by the way, like vast, broad, A certain Lichavi Vimalakīrti by name. Having served the ancient Buddhas, he had generated the roots of virtue by honoring them and making offerings to them. He had attained tolerance as well as eloquence. He played with the great super-knowledges, that is to say, he had magical powers and clairvoyance and such telepathy and such things. He was like one of the ones, He had attained the power of incantations and the fearlessnesses. He had conquered all demons and opponents. He had penetrated the profound way of the Dharma, the teaching. He was liberated through the transcendence of wisdom, so he was enlightened, actually, and with transcendent wisdom. Having integrated his realization with skill and liberative art, He was expert in knowing the thoughts and actions of living beings. By the way, in this printed one, I say liberative technique, which is not wrong for upaya, but now I prefer art, and I think that's really right. And I think I changed that in the downloaded one, which you all will know, if you did download it. Did you download it, Justin? You did? And it has art? You remember? It does liberative art. Yeah. Good. I didn't make many changes. I'm going to make many more. But I didn't make many changes. I'm going to improve it a lot more. But that was one I did make. Yeah. He was expert in knowing the thoughts and actions of living beings. You see, liberative art, if you're enlightened bodhisattva, and every really good spiritual guru should have such an ability. Now, that's why I don't claim to be one, because you should have some degree of abhijna, which means clairvoyance or super knowledge, and a little bit magical awareness, because you have to really read minds of your student to know what they really need and what they're really thinking and what they really are capable of understanding and what this and that. And in a spiritual sense. I mean, you can teach, without being a master of something, if you just know some skills and things, or if you have a textbook, you can still teach out of a textbook like that, like an academic teacher. You can do that. But as a spiritual teacher, you really have to know what the individual student needs. And to do that, you have to have a higher awareness. So a guru who messes around and pretends out of wish for livelihood or status or power or some sort of manipulative power, who pretends to be like a guru but who isn't really, and therefore will be harmful to students by teaching them things that wouldn't be good for them, that's really a sincerely difficult bad karma, actually. That's a bad evolutionary act. Leads to a negative evolution of the person who does that. Very important. So that's, you see, it says, skill in liberative art. He was expert in knowing the thoughts and actions of living beings, of sensitive beings, knowing the strength or weakness of their faculties, and being gifted with unrivaled eloquence. He taught the Dharma appropriately to each. Having applied himself energetically to the Mahayana, he understood it and accomplished his tasks with great finesse. He lived with the deportment of a Buddha, and his superior intelligence was as wide as an ocean. The deportment of a Buddha doesn't mean pompous. It doesn't mean highfalutin, hochnesic, high nose, so holier than thou, and all that. Does not mean that. Buddhas don't behave like that. Buddhas behave just the way beings need them to behave, because they never are harmful to beings. So they don't do a way that will provoke resentment or irritation or whatever. Sometimes you can't help it with certain type of people who are addicted to resentment, but they are maximally, effective in adapting to the need of the beings. They can look ferocious, and in that sense provoke beings too, if some being needs to be kind of, straightened out, get a little bit alerted, They can be fierce also. Doesn't mean they're always nice, but it means they don't have airs, you could say, something like that. Deportment of a Buddha, He lived with the Buddha, and his superior intelligence was as wide as an ocean. He was praised, honored, and commended by all the Buddhas, and was respected by Indra, Brahma, and all the Lokapalas. So the gods really liked him too. In order to develop living beings with his skill in liberative art, he lived in the great city of Vaishali. In other words, he's only living there to help people. He doesn't have to live in the great city of Vaishali. So he's almost being described as practically like a Buddha, right? Although he acts like a normal person. His wealth was inexhaustible for the purpose of sustaining the poor and the helpless. He observed a pure morality in order to protect the immoral. He maintained tolerance and self-control in order to reconcile beings who were angry, cruel, violent, and brutal. He blazed with energy in order to inspire people who were lazy. He maintained concentration, mindfulness, and meditation in order to sustain the mentally troubled. So here you see meditation, like medication, helps those who have mental problems and are mentally troubled. He attained decisive wisdom in order to sustain the foolish. He wore the white clothes of the layman, but yet lived impeccably like a religious devotee. So he was chaste at heart, like Jimmy Carter. He lived at home, but remained aloof from the realm of desire, the realm of pure matter, and the immaterial realm. Those are called the three realms. So he wasn't attached to any particular realm, in other words. He had a son, a wife, he had a child, a wife, and female attendants. He had always maintained continence. So he was a yogi, in other words, even though he had a family. He appeared to be surrounded by servants, yet lived in solitude. He appeared to be adorned with ornaments, yet always was endowed with the auspicious signs and marks, so he didn't need them. He seemed to eat and drink, yet always took nourishment from the taste of meditation. He made his appearance at the fields of sports and in the casinos, but his aim was always to mature those people who were attached to games and gambling. He visited the fashionable heterodox teachers, yet always kept unswavering loyalty to the Buddha. He understood heterodox here means those who give other kinds of unrealistic teachings. I don't know the word heterodox. Outsider teachers you might say. Nowadays I might say outsider teachers. He understood the mundane and transcendental sciences and esoteric practices, yet always took pleasure in my teaching. He mixed in all crowds, yet was respected as foremost of all. So he's just really like a model person, In order to be in harmony with people, he associated with elders, with those of middle age, and with the young, yet always spoke in harmony with the Dharma. He engaged in all sorts of businesses, yet had no interest in profit or possessions. To train living beings, sensitive beings, he would appear at crossroads and on street corners. He participated in government. To turn people away from the individual vehicle and engage them in the universal vehicle, he appeared among listeners and teachers of the Dharma. So he appeared among the apostles, actually, the disciples. To develop children, he visited all the schools. To demonstrate the evils of desire, he even entered the brothels. But that doesn't mean he was a client. But he would, and doesn't mean also he would drive them out with a stick like, get thee Satan. He would try to tell them it's not the way to behave. You shouldn't be, pimp shouldn't be keeping girls like this. Ladies, you shouldn't be behaving like this. You should find another livelihood. He would go there and, in that sense, discuss with people, talk to them. To establish drunkards in correct mindfulness, he entered all the cabarets. But obviously he didn't get drunk with them. He tried to help them go. He set up AA. He was honored as the businessman among businessmen because he demonstrated the priority of the Dharma, of the teaching. He was honored as the landlord among landlords because he renounced the aggressiveness of ownership. He was honored as a warrior among warriors because he cultivated endurance, determination, and fortitude. He was honored as the aristocrat among aristocrats because he suppressed pride, vanity, and arrogance. He was honored as the official among officials because functions of government according to the Dharma, according to justice, that is, according to concentration, according to wisdom, generosity, morality, tolerance, etc., all of these virtues. He was honored as the Prince of Princes because he reversed their attachment to royal pleasures and sovereign power. He was honored as a eunuch in the royal harem because he taught the young ladies according to the Dharma. The kings even allowed him to teach that they had in ancient Indian courts of this time. Luckily, we don't have that. You could say he was honored as a eunuch in the fashion industry because he taught the models according to the Dharma. He was compatible with ordinary people because he appreciated the excellence of ordinary merits. He was honored as the Indra among Indras, among the gods, because he showed them the temporality of their lordship. He was honored as the Brahma among Brahmas, because he showed them the special excellence of intuitive wisdom. He was honored as the Lokapala among Lokapalas, because he fostered the development of all living beings. So he was like a world god guardian. Thus lived the Lichavi Vimalakīrti in the great city of Vaishali endowed with an infinite knowledge of skill in liberative technique, liberative art. And so that's an introduction to this marvelous, amazing person. Like I think FDR, maybe Thomas Jefferson, maybe Abraham Lincoln, Joe Biden, I hope so. Elizabeth Warren, I think, would be like this. But although he wasn't being the governor or the king, this was Vimalakīrti lived in a monarchical society, and he wasn't even chief minister. He wanted to be more flexible to do. He didn't want to be pinned down in a particular role in the society, because he was only there to help everyone. So he was like, he beamed in, So he didn't want to occupy any official position. That would have been interfering with breaking the prime directive of the Bodhisattva. At that time, now we get back to the story after that introduction. Out of this very skill in liberative technique, Vimalakīrti manifested himself as sick, to inquire after the health of the king, after his health. The king, the officials, the lords, the youths, the aristocrats, the householders, the businessmen, the townfolk, the countryfolk, and thousands of other living beings came forth from the great city of Vaishali and called on the invalid. So he was so popular because he was so helpful to everyone. Yeah, if he had been the prime minister, he would not have been so popular. He was just a special type of person. When they arrived, Bill Gates maybe nowadays. Everybody likes Bill Gates because he just gives stuff away all the time. Mark Benioff. Maybe in the future Bezos. In the past, maybe Rockefeller and Carnegie. People who then become more popular because they're not squeezing them, they're giving away. Anyway, they all came forth from the great city of Vaishali and called on the invalid. In a way, came forth is wrong because he's not really in the suburbs, Vimalakīrti. When they arrived, Vimalakīrti taught them the Dharma, beginning his discourse from the actuality of the four main elements. So, he's an old man. He's elder and he's ill, and like that. So then they all go to call on him, and then he gives them all a talk. Now this is interesting because we are in a time when everyone is sick, in a way, or we don't know if we're sick or not. That's that's the reason this is such a dangerous virus, because you don't have symptoms when you're infectious. You of course, once you have symptoms, you're also still infectious, but there's a period, right? At first they said it was about a week, but then lately they say 48 hours. So I don't really know. But anyway, there's this period where you're not symptomatic. And there are different cases, I guess, and different people. So that makes you dangerous potentially. You don't know, you see. And therefore we're all isolated. So we are in a situation like that. And Vimalakīrti now is reading something that is more in line with the individual vehicle Buddhism, focusing more on the suffering side, first noble truth of the original four noble truths. So he says, friends, this is the talk he would give to poor people. He was a little bit of a nag. You'll see. Anyway, friends, he says, this body is so impermanent, fragile, unworthy of confidence, and feeble. It's like that. It is so insubstantial, perishable, short-lived, painful, filled with diseases and subject to changes. Thus, my friends, as this body is only a vessel of many sicknesses, wise humans do not rely on it. This body is like a bowl of foam, unable to bear any pressure. It is like a water bubble, not remaining very long. It is like a mirage born from the appetites of the passions. It is like the trunk of the plantain tree having no core. Alas, this body is like a machine, a nexus of bones and tendons. It is like a magical illusion consisting of falsifications. It is like a dream being an unreal vision. It is like a reflection being the image of former action. Like, when you dream you have a body, but you don't really know what it is, right? Because you don't usually pay attention. You're just a point of awareness in a dream. Although you can, if you want to develop lucid dreaming, that's what you do. You program yourself. In this next dream tonight, when I have a dream, I'm going to be aware of my body. I'm going to look at my hand. I'm going to look at my... That's a very age-old thing, not just a Buddhist thing. You try to become aware of yourself as having a body in the dream, because you do have one. Because you have senses, right? You have eyes, because you see visions. You have ears, because you hear sounds. Rarely do you feel pressure with your skin. Rarely do you smell or taste. But the other senses, but you do sometimes. So you are reproducing a virtual body, actually, really. Like a dream, it's like a reflection, being the image of former actions. So that's like a dream body too. If you watch a horror movie or something, you're likely to have a nightmare. If you were watching some peaceful heavenly thing, you might have a peaceful heavenly dream. So that's certainly not always, but because there are deeper layers in your memory, of course, infinite, complex. But your body, normal body, previous lives, from previous evolutionary actions. It is like an echo being dependent on conditioning. It is like a cloud being characterized by turbulence and dissolution. It is like a flash of lightning being unstable and decaying every moment. So it's sort of there. The body is ownerless, being the product of a variety of conditions. So even you don't really own your own body. It's just it's kind of an involuntary process. This body is inert, like the earth, selfless like water, lifeless like fire, impersonal like the wind, and non-substantial like space. So those are the 5 elements, what they call. Hardness, fluidity, heat, movement, and openness. This body is unreal, being collocations of the 4 main elements. It is void, not existing as self or as self-possessed. It is inanimate, being like grass, trees, walls, clods of earth, and hallucinations. It is inanimate. Oh yeah, I said that, because it's like just a mechanism, It is insensate, being driven like a windmill by your impulses and thoughts that you have no control over. It is filthy, being an agglomeration of pus and excrement. Whoops. It is false, being fated to be broken and destroyed, in spite of being anointed and massaged. It is, I'm saying that he's sitting in a spa building. It is afflicted by the 404 diseases. It is like an ancient well, constantly overwhelmed by old age. Its duration is never certain. Certain only is its end in death. This body is a combination of aggregates, elements, and sense media, which are comparable to murderers, poisonous snakes, and an empty town, respectively. Therefore, you should be revulsed by such a body. You should despair of it and should arouse your admiration for the body of a Tathagata, a Buddha, a being who is completely realistic, completely aware of reality. That's what a Tathagata is. So that's what you should admire, not an ordinary, unenlightened body. So this is, in the mindfulness teaching, when you're mindful, this is the first wave of that mindfulness of the body. When you meditate on your breathing, you're being mindful of the body, because the breath is the link between mind and body, and matter and body, and world and body. So you counting your breaths. And where that goes very quickly in the traditional source is into the impurity and imperfection of the body and its potential for sickness. So therefore, in a way, since we're in this coronavirus, our corona yoga is, in a way, to be aware of sickness, to be aware of its omnipresence, to be aware that we could already be sick, to be aware that others may be sick. That's why we're isolating ourselves and so on. So it's extremely appropriate for this time that this helps us. We can meditate on suffering, the suffering of unenlightened life. And even, of course, many of us don't know there is such a thing as enlightened life. We don't know what enlightenment really means. We have a notion of enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries, that it was a rise of rationalism in science. And actually that is enlightenment, and that is the right thing. But we didn't know that it would meant a cognitive change in the scientist and in the rationalist, a complete awareness within a person of knowing reality, experientially. We think there was measuring reality, because reality, the unfortunate aspect of the Western Enlightenment, was a determination was made out of fear of hell and fear of the spiritual oppression by the churches, sending people to hell for anything, for masturbating, or for feeling happy even, or for saying something mouthy or wrong or whatever, or not being dedicated and faithful enough. So therefore being afraid of that, so then we said, well, we're not going to have a soul, that we're not going to have a mind, there's going to be nothing unseen is going to exist, only what we see and measure. They made a thing. That was unenlightened, that was a dogmatic thing they did. They didn't say, well, let's look and see if all there is matter. Let's see if there is no such thing as a mind. They didn't say that. Because obviously if they look for a mind, they're going to find one. even Descartes. At first he didn't find one. But then he said, but wait, I'm looking. And I failed to find it. And so as long as I keep looking, that's my mind. So I am there because I'm thinking. In other words, he sort of rediscovered a process that he decided to call his mind, although he over-exaggerated it naturally, because he didn't have a colleague. He didn't have a Nagarjuna there to help him out, or Dzongkhapa, or Buddha. He didn't. So he did, that was the deep thing Descartes did. He was the big protagonist of the Enlightenment. So this is really interesting. So Vimalakīrti's teaching is all in the context of sickness. And we now, in our retreats, are in the context of sickness. So he's using the sickness to teach. So we should use it to learn and to teach. Well, I'm not really teaching, I'm learning. I don't put the book, the sutra will teach. I don't pretend to teach. I'm not a spiritual, I'm not a guru. I'm just a teacher. And then I'm the vehicle for the book to teach, Vimalakīrti to teach, not me. Okay? So someone asked me, one of the people asked me, said, am I going to find a way? However, I must say this, am I going to find a way, am I going to introduce people in such a way that they can find a real, live, living Vimalakīrti to talk to meet? Is that possible? Can it be? And I'm saying yes. I said yes to him. I was in a good mood at the time. And I said yes. But I wasn't meaning you can meet me. What I was meaning was like Obi-Wan. Vimalakīrti, as eventually will be revealed in the sutra as we get to the end of it, is himself an emanation of a Buddha. Because once you're a Buddha, you have this extraordinary abilities. And one of the abilities is you can shape energy and matter in any way that is helpful. Like, remember in the Matrix, not only the Neo, when he became the One, could multiply himself and be multiple people, multiple beings, but also Agent Smith. Because I think secretly, they never explained that, but I think really because, remember the way he defeated the agent in the end of the first Matrix, he merged with the Matrix. Once merging with the Matrix, he was able to reduce the Matrix agent to the pure Matrix, not some sort of humanoid-looking creature with a gun shooting him. Just like he reduced the bullets to just Matrix constructions. So therefore they couldn't damage his Matrix body anymore. And he just made them stop dead and then drop on the ground. The ones that have been in the heart of his Matrix body, right? And only Trinity to kiss him could wake him from make him lucidly dream in that matrix, lucidly matricize. That's what she did. So this multiplying of the bodies, this is emanation body. That Buddhas have that power. That's why I love the Matrix, because without mentioning it, and not sure that the creators even know it, but the Buddha is the One. And it isn't that there's only one in one matrix, which this world itself is a matrix. And there are many of them who are aware that they are one of the ones in the matrix, that they're aware of that. And bodhisattvas, very high bodhisattvas, are almost like ones in the ones in the one, They are. So they can multiply different bodies, you see. So then that person could meet him because Vimalakīrti is still here. Vimalakīrti, like Obi-Wan in the Star Trek. No, it's not Star Trek. Obi-Wan in Skywalker, and other beings who get killed in Skywalker. The Jedi, they can be present in their luminous bodies. They can be present. And so if he discovers what that is, and he discovers and develops, see such a luminous body, and even on top of that, if the being who has such a luminous body, like Vimalakīrti, were to decide it would help that person to see him living in the flesh and talk to him, then he could show up. What I'm doing is introducing him to the educational process, whereby he might become capable of that seeing. It isn't just automatically any old body can do that. He has initially, first thing he has, a wish to meet Vimalakīrti. He wants to meet him. So that's the first step. Then there's a bunch of other things to learn. And I hope he's on this telecast. I hope so. I hope he's in this class. I forgot his name. But it was a very, very vital and exciting question. I enjoyed it. And that's my answer. In a way, through the sutra you can meet too. He's present in the sutra. But whether we see him as present in the sutra depends on our ability to see. Okay? Like this. Like after I even translated, I told you that story last time. I gave to my teacher, who is a real living, amazing one, passed away in the coarse flesh body. He passed away 1983. But he's around. But he did say when I said this, he said, you're just beginning to study it, right? I said, no, I translated. He said, yes, you're beginning to study it. I said, no, I studied it at that time, and maybe still right. That's true, because I could see him myself, if I was capable of it. Because I know he's there. I know he's there. Vimalakīrti, my Tenji Wandu my Reverend Keshe, I know he's there. I do. Okay. So now he says, now he goes positive. He gives us Mahayana positive thought here. So then he says, friends, the body of a Tathagata, one who has gone to suchness. Tathagata is the name of a Buddha reflecting the Buddha's awareness, that they've gone to reality. And reality is described, sometimes it's described as thatness, sometimes it's described as suchness. Suchness maybe is a little deeper, because when you say such as this, you mean not exactly this, but such as this. So such means like this. So suchness means everything is sort of like itself, meaning not really itself, but like itself. And when you do that, then you're realizing that indicates that you realize that everything is elusive of your notion of it. You've developed a tolerance of the unproducedness of things, of the uncreatedness of things. You're living in the uncreated, in other words, in nirvana, and where nothing is quite created. So you're open to it being whatever it wants to be, to relating to it in however is best way. That's the uncreated. That means being with it as uncreated. It's not some fixated thing that's just got to be this and that way, if you follow me. So that's a Tathagata. Gata means gone to, but gone to means in the sense of real gone, man, like a hipster talk. They're teaching us with those jazz people. Real gone means you've changed your cognition in such a way that you're gone there. So if I was gone to Vimalakīrti, it means I would see Vimalakīrti. I would gata to Vimalakīrti. Gata is to go in the past, past passive participle. Gata, gone. Okay? So realized suchness means that. Tathagata, that name of Buddha. So the body of a Tathagata, a realistic one, is the body of Dharma. That's the body of reality. Right? All reality becomes your body. Born of intuitive wisdom. Born of intuition. It's actually made of everything is awareness. Everything is direct experience. Everything is intuition. Everything is wisdom. The body of a Tathagata is born of the stores of merit and wisdom. So it's structured by goodness, structured by awareness. It is born of morality, of meditation, of wisdom, of the liberation, and of the knowledge and vision of liberation. So it's liberations and of the knowledge and vision of liberation. So it's born of all these 5 wonderful different kinds of aggregates of processes. It's born of love, compassion, joy, and impartiality. Those are the 4 immeasurable states. It's born of that. It is born of charity, discipline, control. It is born of the path of 10 virtues. It is born of patience and gentleness. It is born of the roots of virtue planted by solid efforts. It is born of the concentrations, the liberations, the meditations, and the trances. It is born of learning, wisdom, technique, liberative art. It is born of the 37 accessories of enlightenment, which are all the mindfulnesses and the faiths and the wisdoms and the strength and the capacities and so forth. It is born of mental quiescence and transcendental analysis. Mental quiescence means the ability to hold your mind in a single point for 1 hour without fluctuating in the slightest. Like visualize a dot of blue color in your mind's eye and just hold that exactly steady for 1 hour. That's when you really achieve mental presence. And once you achieve that, you can lucidly wake, because in a way you're lifted. You become weightless practically when you develop that level of concentration, samadhi or trance. You're like in a trance. And that's mental quiescence. And transcendental analysis means you mobilize, however, that ability to stay completely focused and silent in mind can be mobilized to analyze, to investigate, to scan, to think. It's not like you paralyze your thinking. It isn't a type of presence where your thinking is paralyzed. You mobilize that focus in some creative way. And that's the wisdom of transcendental analysis. It is born of the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, and the 18 special qualities of a Buddha. It is born of all the transcendences. That's generosity, morality, tolerance, etc. It is born of and super knowledges, the abandoned qualities, born of truth, of reality. Is born of reality. It is born of conscious awareness and mindfulness. Friends, the body of a Tathagata, a realistically realized one, is born of innumerable good works. Towards such a body you should turn your aspirations. And in order to eliminate the sicknesses of the passions of all living beings, you should conceive the spirit of unexcelled, perfect enlightenment. So that's the spiel that the sick Vimalakīrti would tell the people who would come to see it. And all they came to say is, "Oh, Vimalakīrti, are you not feeling too bad? Can we cheer you up? Are you not feeling too much pain? How are you? You know how you go when you call and go to hospital and make a sick call. You do like that." And then they get the spiel from him. As I said, he's a bit of a nag. Well, the Vimalakīrti thus taught the Dharma to those who had come to inquire about his sickness. Many hundreds of thousands of living beings conceived the spirit of unexcelled perfect enlightenment. So in other words, somehow by Vimalakīrti, although Vimalakīrti was nagging away, talking about how awful an ordinary body is when you're an ignorant person, and how it's a bundle of sicknesses and pains and things. He then also said there is this great body, that it's like the great Buddha land in a way, it's similar. So this chapter ends in a similar way, except now he's talking about the individual human body. Previously he showed the people that the whole world was like that. Perfect, like a jewel, vajra, clear light. diamond world. And now he's showing this is a diamond body, the body of Tathagata. But in the liquid, fluid, uncreated diamond, not by some solid, hard, harsh one on which you might break a tooth. So that's wonderful. Okay, so that's it. Probably more or less for today. Not quite. A little bit. I'm going to go on a little bit. And second chapter. And then the next is Buddha asks. I'll just introduce. Buddha asks people in his assembly out at the Amrapali garden. He asked them. There's the 500 young Lichavi youths. And then there's all his great disciples, and then there's these thousands of bodhisattvas and gods, and remember this huge assembly there. And then he begins to ask individuals, it starts out with a bunch of individual of his mendicants. He says, hey, why don't you guys he's a member of our Buddhist community, of our three-jewel Dharma community, realistic community, and, therefore it's our tradition, someone's sick, you go pay a sick call, you go visit the patient. So you go visit him. So go ask how he's doing and give him my good wishes, type thing, Buddha says. So then each one says, oh no, today, Your Holiness, Buddha, Shakyamuni, dear Buddha. Please, I don't really, in other translations they say, oh, I refuse, they had people say. But that's wrong. The Sanskrit doesn't say that. It just says, I am reluctant. Now it's sahate. I don't really have enthusiasm to go, There were earlier translations they said that from Chinese, I refuse. They didn't say that. They just said, I don't feel like it. Please don't make me. And then the Buddha said, well, why don't you want to? And then each one tells a story of their last meeting with Vimalakīrti. And he sort of a little bit, he talks too much. But then each one, well, I'll talk about that more in the next session. Now, the one thing you should know is that, and what doesn't hurt you, by the way, to read ahead. If you have downloaded this, if you're being a good student, and you have downloaded this from .com, 84,000.com, it doesn't hurt if you have read this before I do a talk. Because actually, the more you have read it before I do a talk, the more powerful will you get, the more easily will the meaning come to you. The stronger it will come, because you'll already be puzzled by some things, you'd have some questions, you'd already be clear about them, and don't leave the door open. Don't leave it open. And but we're almost finished. Don't you? I forgot what I'm talking about. So that's the thing, and that's where we begin. They compressed the 2 chapters into 1 chapter. So therefore, that's one of the changes we made. We put the 2 chapters into 1 chapter, talking to the mendicants and talking to the lay bodhisattvas. I divided that into 2 chapters, but they put that back into 1 chapter, which I think maybe the Tibetan does that. I just thought it would be more convenient to separate them. I guess because, one reason this sutra was very popular in East Asia probably has a little bit to do with the pride of some educated lay people who were a little bit they respected the monks but in East Asia, but maybe they were a little jealous of the sort of high honoring that we do of mendicants. They'll think, I'm just as smart as them, sort of thing. So they liked Vimalakīrti because he's equally and more enlightened even than many of the mendicants of the monks. And though it became very famous because he was instructing Shariputra, Margalyayana, a lot of the very famous monks. It would be sort of like there was some other person in Jesus' surrounding who was telling the disciples where it was at. Do you know what I mean? So it became very famous for that. For putting the monks in their place, you could say, sort of thing. But Vimalakīrti is very respectful to all the mendicants, and he's only after them only on sort of their dualistic attitudes, some level of narrow-mindedness they may still possess. He was absolutely not after them as lower than him in any way. He wants to step in the education, if you will. So he's always instructing them, and they admit that it was instructing. But they're just saying it's just like, oh, it's like someone who doesn't want to, in the springtime, they go down to jump in the swimming hole, and there's that icy water in the stream, and like, am I really going in there? Put your toe in, and no, okay, maybe I'll just sit in the sun today. You get like that. So that's what it is, a reluctance. Because they all rush to see him, eventually, you'll see, they all go see him. And then the main teaching of the sutra is what he teaches, although he already started there with the two kinds of body, an unenlightened body and an enlightened body. How fabulous the enlightened body is, it's amazing. It's like a Buddhaverse. But the unenlightened body sucks. So that then inspires you to develop the enlightenment. So you'll have an enlightened body, you'll be in an enlightened Buddhaverse, you'll understand it and so on. So that's the thing. Here we are, and our unenlightened bodies are in this unenlightened society, and people are suffering because of this terrible virus, that people have died. It's very, very tragic. People are being mourned, and they should be, and they should also be honored by being cheered on to find their own future life, in a good way, and they shouldn't be mourned in such a way that it makes their traveling Obi-Wan type soul bodies, or super subtle body that they flit around in for a few weeks before they find a rebirth. It shouldn't make them terrorized by people getting all agonized in the morning and shrieking and freaking. That's really not good. It makes them frightened. Because they sort of try to figure out what has happened to them, in a sense. It's like someone who's trying to be lucid dreaming, who's in a dream, but they don't know they're in a dream. And they think it's happening to them, like when we normally dream, that we think we're there and it's happening. And then we never do realize we're in a dream until we wake up and we're not in it anymore. But lucid dreaming means you become aware that you're in a dream while you're still dreaming. And so that's what we want them to do in the between state. We want them to become aware they're in a between, and that they have options. They can navigate, they can travel. They don't have to accept the first impulse to go here or go there. They can choose where to go, so they go to a good place. That's the whole value of the Tibetan Book of Natural Liberation, by teaching people in the between, by their hearing in the between, hearing some advice in the between. And that's really should be the main focus of mourning, M-O-U-R-N, mourning, lamenting people's loss. Sure, we're grievous about their loss, but we care for them. If we really care for them, then they're grievous about their loss, then we should care for where they're going, is the idea. When we realize that it's scientifically more likely, more realistic that they're going somewhere, that they haven't become nothing, we can be more altruistic about them, rather than only focusing on our loss of them. And then we can do something for them in that way. This is a wonderful thing about some Buddhist culture, particularly the Tibetan Buddhist culture. It's really wonderful. And speaking of us, we're all lucky that we're self-isolated. Imagine if you're in a country like Tibet, occupied by the Chinese communists. And the Chinese are now insisting, because they want the economy to go, and that everybody has to act like there's no coronavirus. But if you believe that just because they did some this and that quarantining and they locked people up for a few weeks, that there's no coronavirus left in China, you're really confused. So you can go by Brooklyn Bridge from Mayor de Blasio, and cheer him up, and you can maybe buy some more ventilators. You can go by the Brooklyn Bridge, because there are people in those colonies of communist China who have to do what they're told. They are kind of colonial subjects. And if they're told go out and behave like there's no virus, then they will do that. And if they get sick, then they're not supposed to get sick, so they will just be carted away, actually. So we are at least finally now, even though our leader doesn't still want to really admit what's going on, because he's the type of person who lives in denial, poor thing, we at least have some knowledge, and we're saving ourselves in our isolation. And we therefore can feel sympathetic, and we should extend our compassion for those who are in societies where they have no ability to do that. Okay, so thank you. So that's the lesson for today. We'll be back next Saturday night. and we'll get into all the wonderful incidents between Vimalakīrti and different bodhisattvas. Even Maitreya, the future Buddha, he has a dialogue with him, and Shariputra and many others. And I hope this will be helpful to you, and it will help us all. It helps me actually thinking about these things. I learned something going ahead here, and it will help us tolerate this very worrisome situation that we're all in, financially and physically and emotionally and spiritually. And we can turn into some sort of spiritual advantage for all of ourselves and for others. Then we've found a silver lining in that. So I really like silver linings, silver lining playbook. So see you later. Thank you. Bye.
This Menla online broadcast
today, a dear friend and marvelous person, the Venerable Tenzing Priyadarshi, who's by nationality Indian, but is a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and ordained by in the Tibetan Buddhist order, and a dear friend and a great teacher. And his autobiography, although he's very young for one, but in a way it's worth it. Book launch conversation hosted by MIT on Zoom on Wednesday evening and Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening on your time zone. It's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, put it that way. It's evening in Europe, and it's 10 a.m. in the West Coast. Okay? So I just want to invite you to what should be a delightful conversation based on his book and his marvelous life story thus far. Okay? Thank you.